Well, AEW had their second night of the New Year's Smash, but also NXT had the first round of matches for the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. So, which show was better for this week, Wednesday's Wednesday Night War? We're going to talk about it and discuss and review on this episode of the Deleted Wrestle Zone.
Are you ready? Get up, get up! 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 Get up, get up!
Welcome, everybody, to Deleted Wrestle Zone. All things that is pro wrestling from AEW, NXT, New Japan Pro Wrestling, Impact Wrestling, the National Wrestling Alliance, various promotions, matches, wrestlers, and championships. I am your host, J Rod here. So, let's talk about the ratings that took place for both shows. Now, apparently, there has been a boost on AEW's side. They gain about 762,000 views compared from last week, which was 662,000. So basically, they gain about 100,000 views from last for this week, and they got with the rating of an 0.30 on the 18 to 49 demographic. Now NXT, that's a different story. They gain about gain about 551,000 views compared from last week, which was 641,000. So that's more like let's see, no, less than 100,000. So as for the ratings, they got up to 0.14 18 to 49 demographic. Now we all know there's been a lot of things people can talk about which show was better. So I'll talk about that more on my final thoughts of this on this episode. So, right now, let's jump in with AEW Dynamite's New Year's Smash Night 2. Okay, AEW Dynamite with the New Year's Smash Night 2. It opened up with Eddie Kingston being accompanied by the Butcher and the Blade and the Bunny, facing off against the Bastard, Pac, who's being accompanied by both Penta and Ray Phoenix. Now, you know this feud has been gone long for months, since we all know that Pac was isolated for 8 months in England, and he's been playing mind games with both the Lucha Brothers, and Pac wasn't going to stand by and let him. So this match was long time coming. So we knew that somehow in both sides, we do know that Kingston has the Butcher and the Blade do his bidding in case if Pac was outside. Now, the real question is how this was going to end. I'd say it was a good match between both Pac and Kingston. Now, I don't know if they're going to continue on with this, because we do know Eddie Kingston has another enemy that he that hasn't forgotten about him. So Pac picked up the match by using the broken arrow, but he tried to finish him off using a brutalizer. But all of a sudden, while the Butcher and the Blade showed up, here comes Lance Archer to make a number out of him. But he did state it to Pac many times over that they have a common enemy, but they need to be in the same page. So basically, Pac, he's like the kind of guy, who are you to get in my business? It's not about him getting his business. You got to remember, Eddie Kingston believes that he was never eliminated in that all-out battle royale that took place. And of course, Lance Archer saying that that's not true. You did lose to me. So that's what's going on. Next match we have is Chuck Taylor along with Orange Cassidy facing off Miro, being accompanied by Kip and Penelope Ford. Now here's the stipulation that took place last week. Miro put Chuck Taylor in a stipulation. If he loses, he becomes his butler. So basically, you get to see Miro what type of badass he is, like very aggressive to prove a point and do whatever it takes to ensure he wins, to have Chuck Taylor be his butler. As you know, his rivalry with both Chuck Taylor and Trent has been extended for months, ever since they broke the wedding present. But what I like about how the match ended is when Miro put him in the Cobra in the camel clutch, he looked at Orange Cassidy, telling him that there's nothing he can do to save him. So basically, Orange Cassidy is helpless to help his longtime friend, knowing that Trent's not here. So how is this going to change? Well, I know from what I can tell, it's more like Orange is helpless. He doesn't know what to do. But the real question is, where do we go from here? How are we going to see Chuck Tiller being treated as a butler by Miro, who is a total badass who gets what he wants? Well, we got to wait and see what that happens. Next up, we have a little interview with Party Hardy, which is Private Party and Hardy. As you know, we've been seeing Matt Hardy being a total dick at some point where he's being different than what he used to be known. Now, I know the Private Party have been acting like questioning him a few times or questioning how his behavior. They're trying to be on the same page, but we don't know what's going to happen from then on. Now, back in the ring, we got Inner Circle, all members, right there making their New Year's resolution. Now, everything seems gone great in the beginning, but however, Chris Jericho said that he and MJF will be hunting for the AEW World Tag Team titles. Now, that's when everything started to put in a pause. Santana and Ortiz were like, whoa, wait a minute. Jericho, wait. You brought us here to the Inner Circle, right? Did you forget me and Ortiz are tag team specialists? Did you forget that? And then here comes Sammy telling him, first you teamed up with Hagar, and now with, did you forget the sex gods? You're nothing but a tag team slut. And basically it was more like, how do I say, who is going to be the tag team in Inner Circle to win the titles? But Sammy teamed up with Hagar, calling themselves Sammy Hagar, as reference to Sammy Hagar, from Van Halen, the solo artist. So that kind of made it a little interesting for me, because like I didn't even notice until I rewatched that again. I'm like, oh, good one, because Jericho's like, what did you say you call yourself? Sammy Hagar. So he just laughed at him. So, but he did state it that I think next week, Santana Ortiz, Sammy Hagar, and of course Jericho and MJF will have a 3-way tag team match. Whoever wins will be the primary tag team to go for the AEW World Tag Team titles. So it's more like, let the best man win, or best team win. And you probably say, wait a minute, what about Wardlow? Well, I don't think he would have wanted to team with Hagar at all, but we'll see what happens. Now, as you know, 2 weeks ago, we did celebrated the life of Brody Lee, who's been taken from us. Now, the real question that many fans have talked about, where does Dark Order go from here? Now, I know there's been fans that have been talking about this for a while, saying, what's going to happen? Who's going to be the new leader? Well, there are those saying Eric Rowan could be a good leader. Well, maybe so, but that depends on how AEW would see it. But all of a sudden, they talk to Hangman Page like they're offering him to join. Now, I don't know if they're going to be like the same heelish group, or they're just going to change their dynamic. I'm not sure. But whatever, he said that he will be their friend. But it's still the question, will he join the Dark Order? Well, we don't know yet. Now, the next match, we were supposed to have the Elite in action, which was consistent of Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. Now, their opponents were already out in the ring. It was the Varsity Blondes, consistent of Brian Pillman Jr. and Griff Garrison, along with Danny Limelight. Now, Don Callis, who is the mastermind of everything, somehow he decided to introduce Kenny's partners. Now, we all assumed right from the get-go it was the Young Bucks. But Don Callis decided it's the Good Brothers. I was like, what? So now they're making their AEW debut. And there's a screen where you see the Bucks along with Dasha, along with Tony. Like they can't believe that's happening. Of course, this was like unexpected. And as soon as the match was going, it was like, oh, like we're seeing a new dynamic. Now, I like to call these guys with Kenny and the Good Brothers the Super Elite because that is what, from what I'm hearing, that's what they call themselves. But they never mentioned that. I don't know why, but they should have called themselves the Super Elite. It would make a lot of sense. I even told this to my co-host from the early times of this channel, Nico. He said that's a good name. He even my other friend, who's a big fan of the Bullet Club, Anwar, he said that's a good name too. So basically, it's kind of like that. But however, the match ended in their favor. But the real fun began when John Moxley showed up, who still has an axe to grind with Kenny and all this. But of course, it was a 3-on-1 situation. Here comes the Lucha Brothers out of nowhere. Like, I asked myself, what do they gain out of this? Now, that kind of messes up. I don't know if anybody noticed. Like, I would have assumed the Bucks will immediately come out, try to stop it, or try to question Don Callis. Like, what the hell? What's wrong with you? We're his best friends. So that kind of went into a melee. Um, then all of a sudden, here comes the Bucks. They're trying to tell John Moxley, calm down, calm down. Like they're trying to keep the peace. But out of the blue, here comes the Lucha Brothers, super kinking them for no apparent reason. Now, the initial assumption is, are they making a play for the AEW World Tag Team titles? Well, they could be so. Because I know that they have a lot of questions to figure out what is going on with Kenny. Why is Don Callis being such a dick, trying to stir things up between them? We don't know. Now we get to the little interesting debut, AEW Dynamite debut of The Waiting Room, which is the show that Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, hosts. Her guest of the night was none other than Cody. Now, Britt Baker likes to stir things up a bit, say things. She brought another person, someone that Cody knows a little too well, Jade Cargill, who had a problem with Cody months ago when after Cody defeated Brody Lee, he called himself the Giant Killer, and she took offense to that, saying that you dare call yourself a Giant Killer, and the true giant is in fact Shaquille O'Neal. And as you recall, Jade actually broke Brandy's arm, thinking that with her gone, everything will go back to right. But however, she's been frustrated that no one wants to wrestle her, gets in the face. But here comes Red Velvet, who was under the wing of Randy Rhodes, making a name for herself, try to get in her face. So basically, it became a melee between these two ladies. But however, once again, Britt Baker decides to stir things up a bit. Decided to show how humiliating Thunder Rosa was when they attacked him from behind from that interview. But however, we get a little video message from Thunder Rosa telling her that she already talked to Tony, saying that they're going to have their match on February 3rd, Beach Break. And Britt Baker saying, no, I don't need to wrestle, but it's already been set up. But the way I would see, even if she says she's not going to wrestle Thunder Rosa, Tony Khan can say, you said you're a role model. Were you lying? If you don't wrestle her, then you won't get an opportunity of the AEW Women's title. I would try to use that as leverage. Now you ask yourselves, why they were supposed to have this match this week. The real reason is, from what I understand, Thunder Rosa came in contact with someone who had COVID-19. And you know the protocol, she had to be isolated for that, had to stay home. So they replaced that with a match regarding with the NWA women's match. So that's pretty much what happened. Now, let's jump into the next match, which is a tag team match between Jurassic Express and FTR. This feud came around when Jurassic Express is being recognized as a tag team, but FTR took offense to that, saying that you guys are giving them an opportunity. They're a sideshow, and we're making more or trying to stir things up with Marco's stunt most of the time. But Marco last week said that he was going to take Luchasaurus' spot. I mean, it was a good match, where you see majority of the time you saw FTR separating Marco Stunt away from Jungle Boy. But much of the match was like that. But however, it went into the favor of FTR. So basically, they won the match. But however, is this feud between them is over because they feel Jurassic Express are a joke. They shouldn't be nowhere near getting a title shot. So that's pretty much what happened that night. Now let's get into the championship match, which is the NWA Women's World Championship between Tay Conti and the current champion Serena Deeb. This match was very interesting because of two reasons. Now, Tay Conti has a background in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai, and I can't remember anything else. As for Serena Deeb, she's been around a long time, but she's been throwing some great moves in her offensive submission moves. I was like, wow. But it was a good match. I did like it. But the strange thing is, there was no interference in this match. We do know that Anna Jay was right there by Tay Conti's corner. I asked myself, why doesn't she do anything? Isn't that the Dark Order way? You make sure your people win, the people that matter to you. But it didn't went that way. It just went, a straight, clean match, which was good. I liked it. But however, Serena Deeb maintained the title. Now, I doubt they were going to have a title change because I feel like maybe that's not in the best interest of the NWA having another title change. But we'll see what happens, okay? Because I'm still hoping for something that's going to happen down the line. Now, let's get to the main event, which was for the AEW TNT Championship match. This is between Brian Cage and Darby Allin. This was also a good match. It showed like another storyline with David versus Goliath. You saw Brian Cage beating Darby Allin like a twig, beating him up in every aspect, try to make him bleed. All of that, So basically, it went in that direction. There was a moment that Cage was trying to throw him through a steel steps, but he got himself through, and Darby did the coffin drop. Now, everything seems okay, like Darby Allin was about to do something, but once again, Ricky Starks decides to get involved. Lights turned off. We finally see Sting. Sting does something. He, instead of coming out with the baseball bat, he just whacks him in the throat and then bam, right in the torso. So basically, it did allow Darby Allin to pick up the victory, winning the match. So basically, we got to see Sting do something other than try to have Taz and his team walk away like cowards. So it was a good match, good match. So right now, let's talk about NXT right about now. Okay, so this episode of NXT was special because it's the return of the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. We're now in the first round, so it's not over yet. But however, let's talk about the matches and certain things that took place. First opening match was between Shotzi Blackheart and Candice LeRae. You know this rivalry goes back all the way to Halloween Havoc, where Shotzi Blackheart cost Candice LeRae a shot of the NXT Women's title. And basically, she has her protege, Indy Hartwell, in the match, helping her out on the sidelines, and that's what she's been doing the entire time. So it did allow for Candice LeRae to win, but it won't stop Shotzi Blackheart from there. Now, as you know, there has been an intense rivalry between Pete Dunne, Finn Balor. So basically, that's what happened. Balor comes out giving an interesting promo saying that Kyle O'Reilly is great, he's the best. But however, he broke his jaw and he was like, all of that. And then he calls out, then here comes Pete Dunne, who is like demanding a shot of the NXT title, believing that he's been ducking him, But he forgets there's another person who wants that title, and that person is Karrion Kross. So basically, that's what's happening. Basically, he wants that title so bad that he had to fly from the UK. So everything went into a spin where it was a 3-on-1 situation. Here comes Kyle O'Reilly and the Undisputed Era trying to finish off what they started with Pat McAfee, who's not around. So, but the real question is, what's going to happen now? Is there a possible chance of an alliance? Well, we'll see what happens. Now, Johnny Gargano was throwing this very interesting interview. Apparently, someone decided to have a little fun with him. So Austin Theory shows up with a little envelope. And once again, there was the drawings with Dexter Loomis showing what a crybaby he is. And of course, Johnny was not too thrilled with that. Come on. Everybody knows Dexter Loomis doesn't talk. He does his talking with his drawings. Now let's get to the first round of the Dusty Rhodes Classic. We got grizzled young veterans versus Everrise. Now, as you recall, Everrise thinks they're all that. They're trying to think they're total badasses. They even try to stir things up. If you recall weeks ago, they brought the ref and they acted like the referee's holding back. But the grizzled young veterans are like, what? And they keep going, Everrise rules! Well, let's see what happens. But it turns out in this match, they did show a little bit of character to prove that they do rule, but you cannot deny the ability of grizzled young veterans, who in fact are the first ever NXT UK Tag Team Champions. They advance into the brackets, and if you know, they were close last year. But the real question is, do they have once again to make it all the way to the finals like last year? Now, speaking of the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic, as you know, last week it was announced that they were going to have a women's a Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. And we all know one team has already been announced, and that person is Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell. But this time, Shotzi Blackheart has entered the tournament, but her partner that she picked is someone she went to war with and knows that she has her back. And that person is Ember Moon. So basically, they're going to be one of the teams on this one. Now let's get to the match. Johnny Gargano along with Austin Theory versus Dexter Loomis. There are moments in this match that it was so funny where, okay, Johnny doesn't like him drawing. He's still mad with them for what happened at New Year's Evil, where, you know, he put him in a match that he was not even part of. But he can't stare away from his eyes. So that's what happened. But there are several spots where Austin Theory tried to get involved, but Dexter Loomis was not having it, so he put Austin Theory in a silence, and here comes Johnny Gargano try to take him out. But however, one of the opponents they're going to face for at the Dusty Rhodes Classic, Kushida, shows up and put Johnny Gargano in the hoverboard while Dexter Loomis put Austin Theory in the silence. So in this one, Kushida made his mark, saying that he's coming for the NXT North American Championship. So that is a good thing to watch. Now, in what's been happening in recently, we were supposed to have last week the fight pit between both Tommaso Ciampa and Timothy Thatcher. Now, Thatcher was not medically cleared. He injured himself prior before that. So they had a little debate. So basically, Thatcher asks, kind of say, you realize what you're asking. You're putting yourself in a position. The fight pit is my domain. So Thatcher's like, I know. That's where you want. Is it? So basically, they're like a debate. But he did stated, what you're doing, you're taking people's livers. Like, he thinks that he's an amazing instructor. We've seen him what he did. He tried to take out Austin Gray. So basically, it was like, okay, you got a guy who's very controlling with his students. Then you got one guy who's all about liberty. So that is what's going to happen in this particular match, which I can't wait to see it. That's going to take place next week. Now, we got more matches for the Dusty Rhodes Classic for the first round. We have Jake Atlas facing off against, Jake Atlas and Isaiah Swerve Scott facing off a brand new tag team called MSK. Now, nobody knew they were, but my biggest surprise is who exactly MSK are. Now, if you guys aren't familiarized who they are, it turned out to be Zachary Wentz and Desmond. They were once members of a faction in Impact Wrestling known as the Rascals. I was so happy to see them. This was their NXT debut. I was like, they still act as the little rascals we know, but I was enjoying the match because they're a bit hype up. They know how to pick up their spots. But the way I see it is like, why would they put them in the interview? Come on. These guys have made a name for themselves in the independents. I mean, if you're not a fan of them, then you guys you missed out a lot. But the one thing I did like is how this match was in. You got the debut of a brand new tag team facing off against a tag team that have faced each other on various occasions, you know? So the real question is, who comes out on top? Well, and the answer to that was MSK. So they won on their very first debut, but however, things didn't go exactly for Atlas and Scott's way. They even tried to fight this off in the backstage, but Bronson Lee was able to get in between them to tell them to cool it. So practically, it went in that direction. Now, I think the next match we have is Xia Li once again facing off against what's her name? Valentine Flores. I think she's part of the Performance Center. She just easily took her out, so it was a squash match. But what is interesting is what happened after the match. This mysterious figure who had been seen the entire time, if you recall, Xia Li and Bo were sort of been put in extensive training, a brutal in training. This figure shows up. Now, this figure does this, like telling her what to do. And then this, like take her out. So the real question is, who is this person giving Xia Li orders? That is something we still don't know yet. I mean, we're still trying to learn more. What's going on? We do see Xia Li with a brand new attitude, brand new image. So we'll see what happens when we get to that. Now, speaking of the Dusty Rhodes Classics, once again, another team was been announced for the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic, and that team is Caden Carter and Casey Catanzaro. So they are the ones who are also in the... They even said they are determined to go all the way. So, as you know, they're calling themselves Team Ninja. Catchy name. Now let's get to the main event of the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic with the first round continuation of that. We have Breezango versus the Undisputed Era, Adam Cole, and Roderick Strong. The match was amazing. Now, keep in mind, it was Breezango that actually were the previous tag team champions. They were originally supposed to face the Undisputed Era until they were tricked by Lorcan and Birch. The match was going great in their aspects, but however, out of nowhere, here comes Dunn, Lorcan, and Birch tried to take out Kyle O'Reilly. They even tried to break his jaw once again. And this interference could have cost Undisputed Era chances to, prophesize their second wave of obtaining all the gold. But Lorcan, Birch, and Dunn feel they're done. It's over. It's our shots. So we're the ones who call the shots. So that's what they've been doing, trying to prove Undisputed Era, they're done. But Finn Balor shows up to give a helping hand, but it's still not enough. But however, the match ended in Undisputed Era winning the match, but also advancing. So it appears that this feud is going to go all the way on this one. So let's talk about, in my final thoughts of both shows. Okay, so which show was better? Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a fan of the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. The first time I heard of it, I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Last year was the best one for me because you got Pete Dunne and Matt Riddle, who won the entire tournament and winning the NXT Tag Team Championship. But however, I feel that AEW had the better storylines. Now, keep in mind, you ask yourselves, what storylines are you referring to? Let's go back to the Eddie Kingston and Pac match. Now, as you know, Pac has issues with Eddie Kingston for what he was doing, trying to split the Lucha Brothers up and stir things up. And of course, Archer, who has issues with Kingston, claiming that Archer didn't throw him off, that he was never eliminated. So that storyline still continues. And then all of a sudden, we get the surprise debut of Impact Wrestling's Impact Tag Team Champions, the Good Brothers, where it's like, what the hell? What is Don Callis doing? So that is a pretty interesting storyline, what we're watching. And the match went great as well. And then we got, of course, John Moxley showing up, who's not done. But the real question is, I'm still asking, like, why did the Lucha Brothers get involved in the first place? Why would they align themselves with Moxley? It didn't make no sense to me. And of course, the whole thing when they super kicked the Young Bucks, the speculation is that they could be making a statement they want a shot of the AEW World Tag Team titles. And then we got the whole thing with how to say, with Jade Cargill, who wants an opportunity for a match and has her issues towards Cody, and Red Velvet, who hasn't forgotten what she did to Brandy. So that's a still good story to continue on. But however, Britt Baker thought, oh, she got rid of Thunder Rosa once and for all, saying, you don't belong here in AEW. This is my show. I'm the one who run the division. But however, Tony Khan's like, it's not over. You're still going to fight her. But like I still say, I do believe there's a moment where Tony Khan's going to tell her, if you don't fight Thunder Rosa, then you won't get an opportunity of the AEW women's title. So he'll use that as a leverage. She claims she's a role model, but we'll see what happens with that. And then, what was the next one? Oh, yes, the whole thing with Sting. As you know, as a big Sting fan growing up, yes, we finally get to see him in action. Well, not in the ring, but in a way that fits perfectly with Darby Allin, who is David, and Brian Cage is Goliath. As you know, Goliath had helping hand, but apparently he was taken out. So I thought that was a good match telling the story. You got David versus Goliath in this one. But the real question is Sting going to be the mentor for Darby Allin? Because Taz took it personally with Darby not accepting his help. Which, and Taz doesn't give a damn about that. He only gives a damn that, oh, I offered my hand. He just being disrespectful. But we'll see what that happens. Now, for the NXT side, I did like how Dexter Lumis is still playing little mind games with Johnny Gargano, trying to get it to his head because, look what happened to James Cameron. Who could forget that? But, like I said, the whole thing with the Dusty Rhodes Classic, that is one thing that only kept it right because it was that important. But not much of the whole thing with the storylines in the matches and the whole thing made good impression on me. And to be honest with you, that's why I feel AEW had more good storylines in the entire event. So that's my opinion. I hope you guys can see that too. So I think that's it for now with the Wednesday Night War. So hope you guys enjoy this episode, and I'll be back with more, and maybe 2 more episodes coming out soon. I will release brand new content on the podcast. If you guys follow me, is DWZ Podcast with J-Rod. Like I said, you can follow me on Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Breaker, Radio Public, Overcast, anywhere of those. So, I must bid all of you adieu. So, Goodbye. Mwah. And have a nice day. Bang!